welcome again to GG Table Talk. And as I promised earlier, I'm going to talk about a topic called compassion and empathy. And this is a continuation of what I had spoken earlier in terms of the definition and how can we show compassion and the differences between what is compassion, what is empathy, what is sympathy, and what's kindness. I hope you remember them. All right, let's get on with this session. What do I have to say? Plenty. And this time I'm going to share with you some of my learning experiences with this feeling. Because when you talk about compassion, it is this complex emotion that is characterized by the kind of a desire to do something about it. You know, when you talk about empathy, as I said earlier, it's about having that same understanding with the other person in that particular situation. But when you talk about compassion, it is doing more than just understanding. It goes beyond, okay, I understand you're in this situation. How can I help you? What do I need to do to help you get through some of it, if not all? Yes, sometimes, you know, if you know the concepts of being able to contribute, being able to influence, being able to control, there are limitations of what you can do. And in this aspect of showing compassion to others, normally I would do it in the regards of having that influence to do so. How so? Because when you talk about compassion, I have this feeling that I understand what you're going through. So what can I do to help you alleviate this situation? And how do I go about it? And for this, I will share with you that over the years, actually when I started as a, I can share with you later. It started when I was in school, when I was in my university days, how to cultivate this sense of compassion, this emotion of compassion. Because actually, when you practice empathy, you kind of actively try to understand different perspectives of what others are feeling. And then you sort of start with performing acts of kindness. And it can start small, like I said, with simple words like, thank you, good job, well done, rest well, and hope you're doing okay. Let's see tomorrow is a better day today than yesterday, and make tomorrow a better day than today, that sort of thing. And then important that I shared with you the last time, it has this connection being to listen actively, to engage your listening skills with the other person, meaning that you just don't listen at level one. Level one means that you're hearing just at face value. Sometimes you hear, sometimes you forget about it. But when you listen actively, you kind of pay attention to the needs and feelings of others. What do I mean by this? Then you start understanding that you listen more what the person is saying, in the sense of whether it verbally or non-verbally, and the whole being of that person you want to listen to, rather than just passing through what the person is saying. And then, shall I say, the ability to, how should I say, to recognize this shared suffering, understand that suffering is a universal part of the human experience. And it's not easy, you know, to have this feeling of compassion, because sometimes a lot of us, you know, especially when things are so easy right now with just a tap of your finger, whatever we can buy things online, we can talk online, we can do a lot of decisions online, that sort of thing. You find that we lost that connection of engagement. And sometimes by taking things for granted, this feeling of compassion I see today is kind of lost, because a lot of people just say it as lip service, but do they really mean it? In the sense that, oh yeah, I'm compassionate, you know, I'm a compassionate person, they will say, and it stops there. So what happens after that? Do they take actions, or is this just for the social media? And it's something that sometimes it gives me that sense of guilt, a sense of despair. Why are we doing this, to others? So let me ask you a question. When I spoke to you the last time, have you started feeling compassionate for yourselves? If you have not done it, do some reflection. Okay, I promised the last time that I'll share with you some of the things that I've gone through in this learning journey of how to have compassion. How did I go through my life showing this sense of compassion? Not something that I just want to say that I have this feeling of compassion, but the things that it started was small, and I inherited this from my parents because they taught me by bringing them around in all their social interactions, and they just don't attend such events by their presence, but they take actions of what to do about it, in the sense that getting involved with a lot of charity work, social welfare work, and they always bring with my mom, especially my late mother. She will always bring with her to have the sense of seeing what the others are going through, because sometimes we are blessed so many things in our life that we forget that there are a lot of suffering out there. So I emulated what my parents did with me over the years, and throughout my journey with my family members, I did the same too, because during their school holidays or the semester breaks, I would taking turns, each of my children to follow me to my training assignments, and be it whether it's in a classroom or it can be to some remote areas which they are not familiar with, because all my children have grown up in Kuala Lumpur, the city, and they only experience city life. So they have not been outskirts of the city life. So what I did was, every time when there's a holiday or semester break, I'll say, come along with mommy, and I'll take you to places, become my training assistant. And so because I did this when I was in school, and when I was doing this during my university days. So I tell you, when I brought each one of them with me, it opened their eyes, because they didn't realize there's so much of underprivileged people out there in this country alone without going overseas. And so when they followed me, like for the first time experiencing what's like to bathe near a well, what's it like to go into remote areas where there's no proper camping sites. And it was an experience, a learning experience for each one of them. And a lot of this community works or CSR that I have shared with them, I tell you, what I've gone through, it shocked me beyond words when I went to a particular village where they didn't eat the rice that we eat, the polished rice. They were eating unpolished rice, and with nothing, with just ketchup. And I said, is this what you have? So what our team did was, we went out to the nearest town. We bought them some sardine, cans of sardine to distribute to the small families that we were interacting with. And that was a first time that I experienced something like this, which I have never had this opportunity before. And then also, bless my friends, there are a few of them who sort of had some, shall I say, houses in the outskirts of the city. So what we decided to do then, at that peak of time, was in the 1990s. We heard there was so many girls who were not privileged enough to have a safe life. So what we did was, we contributed to a few shelter homes outside the city, and we brought in these girls to stay inside these houses. And mind you, it's such a shame. It's not their fault. I think that being in such critical situations where they were pregnant and not wanted by their families, I really I have no words for this. When we took all these girls in and gave them shelter to stay until 9 months period, and they had to sort of do something about themselves. So what we did was we shared with them some life skills, some social skills for them to continue their life after delivery period, after the pantang period. So that's something that I felt until this day. I bless my friends for doing this, because we didn't have enough space to accommodate all of them, but many girls heard about the shelter homes, and they came and asked us whether they can stay in these homes, and it was so cramped that we came out to a process whereby those who were fit enough, they have to leave earlier, and those who needed more help to recover, they could stay a little bit longer in these shelter homes. And I'll tell you, these girls, it's not their fault actually. This is where compassion comes in, and I feel that families who disown them should realize that their daughters need a second chance to survive in this world, because it's not that they intentionally want to get pregnant, but circumstances made them pregnant. So I think this is one way that a group of us felt that we can do something about this, and our actions are actually to provide homes for such girls. And I tell you, being with them, teaching them this living skills, life skills for them to continue was something that I just have no words to describe that feeling. And when I was doing mentoring works in Semenanjung, Sabah, Sarawak, I went through that motion again. I have empathy for their cases, but it didn't stop there. I felt that I have to have that desire, this compelling desire to help more. For example, for all those trainers or those educators out there, when you have sessions in hotels or in institutes, you're not supposed to encourage people to take home food. But sometimes when I was doing for single parents, I find that they were not eating the tea break food, and I asked them, why are you not taking this kueh, the cakes? And they asked me with permission, can they take back the curry puffs or the cakes for the children? And at that time I was in a dilemma to say yes or no. I was working with a lot of associations, and I just asked permission whether if they don't take home, can they just have, after the session, eat there with their children. And yes, not the main food, but at least the curry puffs, the cakes, and the kueh mueh. Surprisingly, on the second day, I teared when I saw family members squatting down on the floor eating these cakes and whatnot. And it reminds me that we all take things for granted. We don't like anything, we can't finish, we just throw it. But for these people, every single bite means something to them. And wherever I go nowadays, I always ask permission whether can I wrap up for some of them this kueh, I mean dried stuff, not the heavy like the fried rice or the noodles or whatnot, but at least the cakes. And somehow I find that certain associations, they had this feeling of compassion. Why not, instead of throwing away this food, let's give them something to eat. And it's something that when you look at their faces, especially the mothers not eating but allowing their children to eat first, brought tears to my eyes. And I feel that if any of you out there, when you see situations like this and you have the influence to, should I say, to take actions, please do so. A single step makes a lot of difference. And I find that the more I practice these compassionate steps towards others, I find it very rewarding and very enriching. Many have asked me to speak on the topic of compassion and empathy. Are they the same? What are the differences? They may seem like similar, but they are not the same. The concepts and the processes are kind of interrelated and intertwined in the sense that when you talk about to listen with empathy, it is the ability for us to understand and share similar emotions with the person that you are engaging with at that particular time. For example, when somebody says they've gone through hunger, they're very hungry, and we know there's so many people around the world who are going through this process of not eating at all, and the feeling of hunger is something like not everybody can empathize, because some of them are living with so much food on their plate that they don't realize that there are people in other parts of the world who feel the pangs of hunger. And I can empathize this feeling because I do fasting during the month of Ramadan, and I find that having one or two meals a day is not the same as eating all the time every day. And then when somebody speak of death, I can also empathize with them, because personally I have experienced the death of my parents and the death of my two brothers. So that is empathy, the ability to understand and share the same feeling with the other person. So what's compassion then? Oh, that's different. Compassion has an element of empathy. However, in compassion, you kind of move that emotion, and it's a complex emotion, and somehow it is characterized by an action, by a deeper understanding and empathy for the suffering of others, and it is accompanied by the strong desire to alleviate that suffering. And it goes beyond just that emotion for someone's misfortune or experience. It kind of includes, how shall I say it, a warm-hearted, supportive reaction and commitment to, well, I say, take action to help. And that is the meaning of compassion, when it's directed towards oneself, not only to yourself when you experience this, as well as towards others. And it can manifest in various forms of kind and helpful behavior. So now I hope you can understand there's a difference between empathy and compassion. So if we talk about compassion, compassion is something, shall I say, let me highlight some of the key aspects of compassion. In a sense, like when you have some kind of sensitivity to that suffering, and it involves being aware and sensitive to the pain, the misfortune, or any hardship of the other person that you are interacting with. And secondly, of course, you may have empathy in the sense that compassion actually includes this feeling of empathy, the ability to understand and to have this similar sharing with the other person. Another aspect of compassion is you feel the motivation to help. What do I mean by this? Unlike empathy, compassion is not just a feeling for someone, it includes a compelling desire to help them. So that's the difference now. You see, not just understanding, but you have this desire, this compelling desire to help them. And what else? What's another aspect of compassion? Compassion is very action-oriented in the sense that, how shall I say it? Compassion often leads to not just feeling for someone. You kind of take leads, take actions, take steps to relieve that suffering, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And another aspect of compassion is to have self-compassion. And this is the ability to direct these feelings and actions toward oneself. So you must have a compassion for yourself first before you can have compassion for others. And then only the sense of compassion grows. Someone asked me again, JJ, is empathy same with sympathy? Look, I've said earlier that when you talk about empathy is the feeling of you being able to understand what the other person is feeling, all right? But sympathy is a feeling of sorrow or pity for another's misfortune or suffering. So you can just say, I'm sad, and that's it, stops there. You don't have the need to understand what this sadness is all about. When we talk about empathy, you have understanding of that. But like some people say, putting yourself in the other person's shoes or putting yourself in the other person's situation. Of course, sometimes people say, JJ, can we have compassion without taking actions? Yes. In certain circumstances, yes, you can have a feeling of compassion, but you're not taking any action. But then this is what we call being kind. It's a lot of people say it's kindness. So when we do not take actions, often the result is called kindness. So if we want to show compassion, how do we show it? It's such a thin line between what I've said earlier, having that feeling of empathy, having kindness, having sympathy, having compassion. So how do you go about to show compassion? Actually, that's very simple, and we do it often without realizing it. Sometimes it's like opening the door for someone, or motivating others. When we have conversation, when we motivate, that's a feeling of compassion too. Or practice the acts of kindness towards another person. What else? Or you can allocate time to bond with friends and family and have a good time. You see, that's where building rapport and trust develops, because it is that platform that allows us to sort of mold that friendship that we have over the years. And sometimes just to say encouraging words, like you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be arrogant, just some encouraging words. For example, thank you, or good job, well done, and smile, because I often do this with my staff, and I find that just simple words like this make the day for them. And it's refreshing actually to have this feeling with them. And with family members and what else? Close friends, sharing a hug or a handshake is also another gesture of showing compassion. What else? You can offer to help someone to do a list. For example, sometimes as a mentor, we sort of give advice, and we offer help. And we offer help, like for example, they need some references or they need to do some research. I would always give some suggestions or make remarks of how they can go about doing this. So actually, it is very simple to have this act of compassion. Okay? Start with yourself, start with the family, and then broaden the perspective. Thank you for listening. If you like your watching, we can continue, because there's going to be part 2 of this topic. Bye-bye from JJ.